All right, this is day 346. Can you believe it? Man, where were we more than a year ago at the beginning of 2019 with this? We had to take a little break for me to pursue my um, philosophy degree. I had to put energy, and that was the right thing to do. The right thing to do. But now we're pouring all the energy we can into making some good headway on what we want to happen here at Racial Change. I want to get the message across to us, but there's also I can say a lot for completion. As soon as I finish this, I've got to get right in to consistently drawing some revenue, and I'm moving. So life is just coming at me. And part of the success is your support, you watching these videos, the friends I know that watch these videos, staying clean and sober, some of my support group. It's very limited, you might say. I don't have travel with a posse and things like that. I'm actually an introvert, but those handful or so of people in my life are very potent people, very important. So they help me out a whole lot as well. Thank you as well. What we do here is talking about black issues and challenges in America. We look at it from a whole lot of as many angles as we can, because some of the stuff is some of the stuff we expose here and talk about is might be very new to you. I know it was new to me. I had no idea racism was such an integral part of my experience in America. I had a Jewish shop teacher, 4 years. If you watch these videos, I've told this story before. He understood. He would understand all this. If he's still alive, he's a very old man. But he would understand all of this stuff, because our Jewish brothers and sisters have, they go through same racial issues or pressures around the planet as well, But he understood, and with the 4 years I was taking electronics and stuff, he would call me into his office, 2 or 3 times a year, right? And talk to me about the craziest stuff. But something, I never understood what he was saying. I understand now, but it was always about looking out for myself racially, um, being careful and being aware and stuff like that. I didn't get. I was in high school. I was getting high, um, surrounded by white folks. Thought I was in there, you know, But you know, I wish he had been a little more explicit. I wish he had a video series to say that, America in school, you're gonna be exposed to the same information. It's going to appear that you have the same opportunities and all this stuff, but when you leave these doors, that the world is going to be so much different. It's going to have a different emphasis, a different focus. Uh, but I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know what to ask. I had no one to to bounce. There was nobody in my life with wisdom to help me understand, but now I know today, right? I'm over 50 years old now. I understand today what he was talking about. It was also confusing because although he was Jewish, he was very white to me. I didn't see the difference between Jewish people and white people. I hadn't even gotten that far in my understanding of how um, important race is in America, right? I mean that's serious racism. Like here, what things we talk about is on skin color, so it's kind of a rapid racism that we can recognize and understand. It happens right there on the face, and we can see it from across the street, and it happens. But you know, that's some serious racism. Like when you see people with the same skin color having some reason to marginalize each other and have some resistance there. That's a whole nother level. I don't understand that one. All right. I like to have fun. I'm glad I can laugh here. You know, reality is what reality is going to be. What I want, my intent goal is that we would be awake, aware. You know, take these resources and these little talks, what Dr. Anderson talks about, and some of the other resources that we uh, reference to empower us um, to be in a better position to self-determine our life and our way, what we want to do in the world and in the land. That's very much possible. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. We've gone through all of his, well, not through entirely all of his material, but his material informs a lot of what we do here. One thing, first book I read of his is a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We are in that book today on question 91, if you have it. Black labor, white wealth, search for power, and economic justice, and Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. Poweronomics. You can find Dr. Anderson here on YouTube and poweronomics.com. Go check them out behind me. You'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You'll find Black women supporting one another, having their relationships and communities. They're very important. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of Black Facebook experience. If you can't find your flavor here on the World Wide Web, do what I did. Start a project. Plenty of people have done it. It's liberating. It's freeing. Do it. Go for it. When if you got a business mind, go holler at Dr. Boyce Watkins at the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com. Also, I got a good man that I talked to on the phone anyway, Tyrone Gregory, self-employed tax guy. Also, if you've got a money mind, want to understand macroeconomic structures and how things work in the world, Federal Reserve and things like that. A good book to read on that is The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. And we also have story time. I'm sure we'll visit this maybe once or twice more before we leave this project. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Fictional account of slave life in America, but informed by factual events. Today we're talking about, we're in the Black History Reader, question 91. Now, question 91 says, what is the single most impactful and enduring medical contribution unknowingly made by a black person to modern science. And wow, I read this book, and obviously there's a lot of information floating around up here. So when I revisited this book and these questions, my mind is blown in some of these major events that have happened, that some of the things that Dr. Anderson addresses in here, and today is a mind blower. It's something I've seen on TV, through television shows, but I had no idea that I had a great resource right here in front of me for so long. So to get behind and understand this question about a black person's contribution to modern science, I have to introduce you to a woman named Henrietta Lacks. Um, she was born Loretta Pleasant, I think it's South Carolina, but she wound up a tobacco farmer in Maryland. She was born August 1st, 1920, and she died from cervical cancer um, October 4th, 1951. 31 short years for this amazing woman. Um, her contribution is troubling, right? And it's going to bring up another one of America's patterns that it enacts, engages with disadvantaged people, and that is Henrietta. Her cervical cancer was kind of unique. The cancerous cells that were actually harvested from her cancer were immortal cells. They were immortal cells, and just that says they didn't die. They just kept reproducing, reproducing, and reproducing. And but which is, a problem with cancer is that the cells. Cells, just like human life, are supposed to have a life cycle, right? They come on and they're going to copy, produce copies and replicate, but in general, there's only supposed to do that so many times, and then they die away, right? So what the problem with cancer cells is, some kinds of cancer are just a result of cells that live longer, and they keep reproducing, and there's no death cycle in that community, and so you've got to get tumors and malignancies from that. Um, a cancer cell that doesn't die, it divides and just keeps dividing, has a life cycle, then um, that's going to be a major problem for an individual who's afflicted with that condition. Henrietta Lacks, well, was one person um, who had this. Now, um, she eventually died and all that, but the the medical community, maybe some intern or some low-level guy took these cells, and these cells were purple, like physically purple cells. You wonder where this cancer came from, because it's not like just uh, human cells going awry. It's like they're purple, that had lived inside her body. So anyway, some of this was harvested and given to um, a guy. I think his name was Dr. George George Gey, Gey, and he took them, and he had this replicating, living forever cancer cells in his hands, and he ended up distributing them all over the world, and huge industries erupted. These cells, it created just a whole brand new industry um, for medical research, right? And this kind of thing had revenue in the billions. People really profited from her her sacrifice. All right, but they took it after she was dead, went on and created these massive medical communities and stuff like that, and you know just left her family struggling. Right? They did not reciprocate the contribution of Henrietta Lacks. That's so sad. These cells, or the name, they kind of kept her name. They're called HeLa cells, and that's about as much as we get to know that they're connected to Henrietta Lacks. But they were taken without her consent or her family's consent and sold, right? And you got people, the white community, medical community, making money hand over fist on these cells, experimentation, research, and all that. So much good came out of that. It benefited the white community financially. We have some aspects of the medical community benefited. Jonas Salk, um, uh, kind of referenced these cells to help with the polio epidemic. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow in any of this coronavirus research that her cells may have wandered in to that community to try to help find some answers to our present epidemic. So they use her cells to grow viruses, conduct experiments, map DNA. Because these things they just keep dividing and growing. Apparently they might not even need a whole lot of care. They may be kind of like a cactus plant. You just have to nourish them once a month, and they're cool. So these cells, how they were taken, how they were used around the world, it just echoes again um, the way the white establishment just uses up disadvantaged folks for its own gain, self-interest. Last semester, fall semester, I was taking ethics. It's called bioethics. Ethics in the medical community, and I did a paper on Miss Evers' Boys, and it's a movie about the Tuskegee experiment study where syphilis is given to black men, and they didn't know what was going on. They were never treated and stuff like that. And finally, it came out, so there was some compensation later on. But it was interesting, like, see some of the justification for that study was that they thought black men um, suffered syphilis different than white men, right? I mean, they already had the agents to cure it. I think penicillin or some like that, some common wipes it out, addresses it, but instead they let these men stay infected. They infected their partners, who infected their children and stuff. Really, really hardball, cruel stuff with medicine towards black folks. And here we read in Dr. Anderson's uh, this portion here, read about exposure to radiation. I've done a piece here, Racial Change, about um, experimentation on females, and their sexual parts, and stuff like that without anesthetics, and allowing things to go on. It is very, very diabolical and sadistic of what the white medical community, portions of the white medical community, have engaged in. When it's arrayed, um, its attention at black folks, right? In the case of the syphilis study, it was really unnecessary. Um, it was an unnecessary study, and they already had the cure for it. So it was kind of like the story of Chrysler, and you had guys. Some of the challenges with the Chrysler car maker is that they were just producing cars, right? They didn't have a healthy in and out system of cars. They were just making cars. So people at the top rungs of the company, sure they were making money. They kept the union employed, and people were making money, but they weren't selling anything. um, so that kind of helped the company decline, right? And a guy named Lee Iacocca came on, and that's the first thing he did is like, we got acres of cars here that we got to move and sell. So he brought restoration to the company because they were engaging in all this unnecessary manufacturing. But that's the same thing with the white medical community, in terms, of these cells, syphilis, radiation, and all that is like, um, there's there's no consciousness about what's going on, and this is exacerbated by the fact that the HeLa cells make money, are still out there. Um, the people are still uh, becoming rich from that, um, from how these cells are used and worked with, distributed around the planet. And yet her family, offspring, those connected with her are get a big donut, a big zero financially, from all that wealth being circulated around the world in the white community. That's very, very problematic, right? We talked about our Navajo brothers and sisters and family the other day about uranium mining being, extracted from their land, right? Estimated, adjusted as almost like $1 billion worth of ore out of there. Yet, the natives did the work and were exposed and poisoned and compromised by that. And that's right. That from the outside, people don't. I don't know if people on the outskirts of America understand what goes on in this nation, how this land treats its own, right? We talked about the wind talkers, and again the Navajo, right? They went over there and risked themselves and their lives. They had a special skill with their language and whatnot, and yet come home to the reservation and the nation and stuff, and not. Well, they got their veteran benefits, but the people, it did not translate into uh, overwhelming opportunities and whatnot for the Navajo people. That's very, very discouraging, right? Black folks, right? We put our, um, we signed up, and we went over there and participated. Um, the Japanese participated, even interred, right? They still helped out America and whatnot. Some groups maybe fared well, some groups maybe not so well. With these immortal cells, though, the dollar uh, price tag on them, their use, and also all the other benefits, the more than just dollar amounts, but real benefit. It's not like the syphilis experiment, which was superfluous. These HeLa cells are still around today in use, making money and all that. And the the family, at least, that should have ownership, some rights to these cells, should have aren't getting their due. And that let me end with this in our last few minutes. This is something that's important. Is you got to take notice of how the white establishment knows how to secure and gather resources and quickly put their stamp of ownership on it, and so they can be exclusive and so they can own it and all that. Who knows how many inventions, patents, from slavery and any kind of um, um, technology from slavery on forward that's been appropriated. Some things like Harry Beecher Stowe talks about a guy named George who improved business for a white man, but then his master got jealous and took George out of there, right? And then gets to be paid rights from the increase in production at this place. And George, he gets treated, he gets to go back to the plantation and treated harshly under his ignorant slave master, because he's obviously smarter than the master. The master didn't create um, the technology to improve this other company's business, but he appropriated George's work and labor and got, royalties from the use of that new technology in that space. That's back in the mid 1800s that Harriet's writing about that. And I believe that's a factual event. It's probably um, underreported how often a slave, thinking that he or she is just trying to make life better, but all it does is it increases production, which causes the greater demand for the slaves. It's a backward thing, just like Eli Whitney's cotton gin. You know, oh, kind of a white man with good intentions, but the slave trade exploded because now we can process cotton that much faster. Henrietta Lacks, the HeLa cells are, the same category. That this country is too quick to steal and appropriate black labor, success, creativity, and gather it into white spaces and environments. Right? And that's something that black people we need to get better with understanding patents, copyrights, things like that, right? So that ownership is everything in America. It's a lot of profit, money, and we want to get all that and manipulate. And there's racism out there and stuff like that. But when you got the right paperwork registered with your Library of Congress and all that stuff, then you own something and control it and can then maximize some profit from that. Remember that some of that lesson very important. Don't just like if you're on the job, don't just help out your job and try to increase manufacturing and spill your guts because somebody's going to hear that and know how to maximize that. And they're not even going to care that you got nothing out of the deal. I'm going to stop there. That's day 346 out of the way. I think I feel my voice. I'm losing my voice. I've been going pretty hard trying to finish up before I get into my next phase of life. So I'm going to stop there and take a break. I'm Tomlin Nyback. That's 365 days toward racial change. Come back and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.